Hey, Brass Facts here. Today I'm going to be doing something slightly different. For the last couple videos I've been mentioning terms like Recce, SBR, PDW, PCC, SPR. If I keep that up, I'll be using terms like SAPR, SAWC, and POU. You already do that! Alright, anyway. This is a comparison of the different rifle types and kind of categories to put rifles in. Understand this is somewhat arbitrary and more of a metric to understand how I approach viewing rifle categories. You should not take this as gospel, and there is a good chance at least that you'll disagree with some of it, if not all. I'm just a dude on the internet putting this together. Real life is not a video game. Most rifles massively overlap in categories, and nothing really fits in nice little boxes. So with that out of the way, let's put things in nice little boxes.
Get in the box.
Starting off with the most prolific term, a term terrorizing Instagram and YouTube alike. Recce! The GPR, or the general purpose rifle. This rifle is typically defined by having magnification of some kind, typically an LPVO or an ACOG or a magnified red dot. The optic choice is generally driving what you want to primarily do with the weapon. Right, with an LPVO, that's more long-range oriented. An ACOG is more weight or mountain gun-esque oriented, and a magnified red dot would be like night vision-ish or simply close-range oriented. Most people nowadays just call it Recce because it sounds way more tactical and it really hits all the spots in the SEO. So that's why I use it. But really, Recce only makes sense when you're explaining the evolution of a infantry going from a front sight block M4 or Mark 18 to a free-floated, lightweight, magnified rifle basically for troops with better funding. I prefer the term GPR because TLAs, and that's what it is. It's a general purpose rifle. Master of none, but pretty damn good across the board. With LPVOs or something like an ACOG, you can realistically expect first round hits out to 500, 600 yards even with FMJ ammo. And you could potentially even go farther, though typically if you have any kind of wind, you're going to begin to notice the limitations of magnification, reticle design, or other factors. Realistically, in a real world combat condition, right, you don't have time to set up your shots, unknown ranges, and combine that with heavy wind, you can half your expected range down to 300-ish yards, and I kind of have that represented on the chart here. You combine it with 1x in some form of another, ACOG piggybacked on top, 1x on an LPVO, or a magnifier setup. You also have a very good to acceptable CQ style weapon, usually with a flashlight, and then you combine 1x on one of those options. You can also mount just a red dot on a setup like this, right? This used to be, you've seen this on the channel a lot, typically mounted with an LPVO. I don't have an LPVO for this rifle right now, so this is just a placeholder as I use this as my home defense rifle. A red dot equipped GPR is typically less of a GPR, more of a assaulter style setup where you want to maintain some of your lethality instead of running a suppressor. And you'll kind of see that in the next category. There's not enough room. There, we'll do it like this. Next up, the SBR category. This category generally includes all short rifles, 12.5 and under, but above 10.5 if we're talking 5.56. You can go a little shorter if you're running something like 7.6239. Let's ignore the ATF a second because they're pretty lame and you should probably ignore them. Wait, no, that wasn't a mission of guilt. And also this whole chart wouldn't work if we started calling these things pistols instead of rifles. Aside from very niche scenarios, you'll find most SBRs are suppressed. Why? Because GPRs are absolutely short enough for close range work, and going any shorter does come with noticeable trade-offs, lethality, rail space, and a number of other factors. However, when you start suppressing a 16-inch GBR, you go from a very usable package, very nimble, easy to maneuver, and even with not full-size cans like K cans, you begin to notice your rifle feeling more and more like an M16 and less like a fighting rifle. Not that M16s are whatever, you know what I mean. And then with the heavy weight on the front, you get, physics and shit. Anyway, the point is, SBRs are generally defined by you wanting to suppress your rifle while not just completely fucking over the maneuverability, weight distribution, and a number of other factors. You will take a hit for having that shorter barrel, primarily with lethality at range, terminal ballistics, especially with something like 5.56, which is very velocity dependent. You don't really take as much of a hit at range in terms of ranged capability. I have this video up here. You can absolutely hit out to just as far as your GPR is set up, and that's more of a function of the optical choice versus the barrel being the main limiting factor. Right? Barrel is more of a function of lethality, less of a function of range-ish, right? That's generalizing. For your SBR, you will notice that your optic choice is kind of the defining factor in which direction you want to take it. As you saw before, you could put a red dot on your rifle and be a much more close-in oriented SBR setup designed around, doing close range stuff, night vision stuff. You can throw a optic like this LCAN or other LPVOs and lose a little bit of that close range utility, right? Like co-witnessing, passive aiming under night vision, or simply just ease of use, and gain a little more extra range, right? You can even put a 1 to 10x here and really get some Recce style capabilities. But at the end of the day, for this rifle, I chose a 1 to 4x, a durable one with a red dot bright illumination to really kind of nail that category of a shorter GPR rifle, if that makes sense. A subcategory here would be something like a 300 Blackout short rifle, where the goal is to really chunk down on that overall length when you actually do care about overall length, and the end length is something that of a SBR without a suppressor, but your rifle has a suppressor, right, with a 300 Blackout, so you kind of get to that range. You also get the benefits of a 300 Blackout, but I'm not really going to talk about that here today. So yeah, if we want to call a category a generalist rifle, it would either be an SBR with a suppressor, or if you don't want to run suppressed, you would go to a longer setup, like a GPR without a suppressor to get back that lethality. This is generally agreed upon as a very convenient length. The next category, we get into pistol caliber carbines. I don't have a pistol caliber carbine anymore. For civilians, this category is beginning to look somewhat lame because you're roughly at the same size as a 300 Blackout, or the larger ones are almost the same size as unsuppressed 5.56 SBR categories. So you end up in a roughly same size category, but you have drastically reduced terminal performance, and these were honestly designed in the era before anyone could figure out how to really make intermediate cartridges and short barrels reliable. Now that that's achieved, nowadays they're more of a relic of the past with a very small use case, especially being semi-automatic. Going down to a even smaller category, we have the PDW. This guy right here is a TP9 from B&T. Other PDWs that are super popular are the Flux Raider or some of those Glock chassis systems. Here is where size begins to become super critical, or the defining characteristic. You're looking at getting to 15-inch or lower overall length to stow the rifle or the PDW in a bag or even on-person carry. This generally disqualifies most PCCs like the Scorpion or the MPX as being a PDW, though those versions have K versions which approach the PDW category. This length is critical because the task is concealment of a stocked weapon. I go over this in decent length in this video I'll post above here-ish, and I kind of go over one of the niche use cases for a system like this and why you want to minimize your size to accomplish a task. All right, let's move on to the other extreme. This table is not... It's not... Damn it. Can I... No, that's... Okay. We'll do a quick showcase. Right? It's the picture. I'll roll in footage, but... Alright, now to the extreme end, the SPR. Originally, this term referred to the Special Purpose Receiver, an attempt to accurize the M16 to kind of fill a designated marksman role. But like Recce, the SPR term got coined by the internet to just kind of be a broad, sweeping term to talk about a 5.56 marksman rifle, right? Note, while fundamentally a Recce rifle on paper is about as capable as an SPR in terms of performance out of the gun, there are a number of things that make an SPR, and a GPR, a GPR. GPRs, general purpose rifles, care about 0 to 100 about as much or more than it cares about 300 and beyond. While GPRs are capable of 300 and beyond, that is not the primary driving design factor. A SPR is a conscious choice by the user to maximize your range performance of the 5.56 round while giving up some closer range performance. The SPR is more of a system than just a philosophy like Recce is. SPRs are characterized by generally having bipods, tripods, free-floating systems, longer barrels to accommodate their mission and maintain lethality at range, velocity to edge out that performance envelope and to help against wind and other factors. You generally also use higher grain bullets, like the 69 grain, 77 grain. You generally use open tip match to improve accuracy, right? This whole thing is a system. And finally, you use something like a rifle scope with a high end, generally around 10x to upwards of 16 or 20x. Modern LPVOs are getting to the point where they have similar magnification ranges to, say, this rifle scope. This rifle scope right here is a primary arms, 2.5 to 10x. So, as you know, there are actually already 8x and even 10x LPVOs. So why go for something like this when I can get a 1x on a smaller package? Well, no matter how Gucci and unicorn encrusted your glass is, and no matter how much you spent on it, you will always have to battle physics. A dedicated rifle scope offers much more forgiving exit people due to the larger objective lens, right? With a 1x, you're generally capped to a much smaller objective lens to get that 1x. You get parallax adjustment, which allows you to focus at longer ranges much more effectively than just a pupil exit over here, which is more focusing you to the scope and less focusing the scope in general. You also get turrets to dial, and you get, typically, a reticle built for the task at hand. Now, there are absolutely LPVOs that have some of these features, but no LPVO that I know of has all of these features. And for many, all of these are mandatory to engage past a certain range. Finally, you combine this, as mentioned, with precision ammo, and suddenly you have a scenario where the sum of the parts creates something infinitely better than just the sum. Namely, the ability to hit out with ease-ish, out to 600, 7, and maybe even 1,000 yards. Worth noting, this isn't free. This costs cost, right? This costs more money, this costs weight, and this generally costs having a good 1x usable setup. Sure, you can put a red dot on here, but this red dot up here is absolutely not even close to even, say, a 1x on a intermediately priced LPVO for 1x stuff. Right? There's no free lunch. With an SPR, you've made significant choices to compromise your 1x or even your fighting rifle capability to gain some more consistency at range. Let's fill out this chart a little more. I'm going to keep this on the table because I don't have these other rifles because I'm not really in that. But BR, or battle rifle. The boxes are kind of getting out of control here, so just kind of ignore the box. It looked like shit. So just understand that a battle rifle is basically a GPR, a general purpose rifle, but in a larger caliber, typically .308. The battle rifle is designed with versatile performance in mind, with rough engagement distances that are roughly the same, 0 to 300, 0 to 400, maybe even 0 to 500, right? Same as the GPR. There is a slight hit at the low end because, if anyone's tried it, something like even a SCAR 17, which is known for being controllable, still is incredibly awkward to use at closer ranges due to concussive force, rate of fire, and magazine size, as well as bulk. There's a reason why the 5.56 is the dominant close quarters caliber. Much like the GPR, we can take fundamentally the same platform and swap out optics, add rails, bipods, throw in a more accurate round, a more accurate barrel, so on and so forth, and turn our BR, something like the Mark 17, into a sniper system. A term used here as often is the SASS, the semi-automatic sniper system, and much like the SPR, you're trading a lot of your low-end functionality to gain up on that high-end in terms of range. You load up on some weight, maybe a bull barrel, get some features like a bipod or a tripod, and you now have increased capability with first-round hits on extended range targets. Both of these systems, the BR and the SASS, offer more capability than a GPR and an SPR, respectively. However, they do so by using a round, the 308 round typically, but other rounds exist like 6.5. However, this costs you specifically weight, cost of the system, bulk of the system, right? Because the system needs to be built up to handle the larger round. It costs you the ability of holding X amount of rounds on your person. It costs you recoil and a number of other factors. A BR will give you superior wind bucking capabilities, and if that's a major concern, it might be worth looking into a BR over a GPR or an SPR, right? You'll also have increased lethality with your 308 round at similar ranges that a 5.56 might begin to struggle at. But at the end of the day, you're going to be slashing your ammo roughly in half, and that's a hit most people are not willing to take, especially in an era where we're already minimizing ammo load capabilities as a whole. And that's why we generally see a shift away from BRs as a platform or concept. The SASS still makes sense, right? But the issue is on the civilian market, SASs or 308 rifles have really bad cost to performance ratios. That's something that is improving nowadays, though. Finally, the most important category. This is now an AUG channel. No, I'm just kidding. I don't really like bullpups, though I'm willing to give one a go up here in the future when I can get my hands on one. Generally, I'm quite limited in being a lefty, but anyway, that's an aside. Going into disclaimer round 2 and to kind of round out this thought experiment, because that's really all this is. This is my system. Terms are not mine, but this is how I kind of view rifle breakdowns. It helps me understand rifle builds, goals, objectives. But it's very easy to try to want to tick all of the boxes when you build your rifle or purchase your rifle. You're like, hey, I want range. I want CQB performance. Fuck it, I want a bipod because I really like bipods. I want a light, laser. And then before you know it, you end up with a rifle that costs as much as a BR, weighs as much as a BR, shoots 5.56, and isn't even suppressed. This chart here helps you show strengths and weaknesses, and where systems struggle and where systems begin to excel at. The correct assumption into reading a chart like this, at least personally for me, is that a GPR, a general purpose rifle, or a suppressed SBR, a short rifle, is the answer for 90% of your use cases. Everything else is niche as fuck. And you have to understand what that niche is, and you have to actually want to enter that niche. The flip side of this graph, some personal advice here. Don't ever build a rifle seeking to hit a category here, right? How often do you hear someone say, I'm making a Recce rifle, or I'm building an SPR? And while that does convey the intent quite well, the ambiguity of these terms and mimicking a style is the wrong way to go about it. Figure out what your mission or your goal is. Is this a generalist rifle, your one rifle to rule them all? Are you trying to conceal this weapon system? Or do you want a cheap plinker? Do you want to hit at 1,000 yards? And then design your system around the first and maybe second goal. Don't try to hit 1 through 5. Don't say, I want a Recce, I want a PDW, I want an SPR. Right? How often do you hear, hey, I want an SPR? And then you ask them, hey, what's your max extended engagement range? And they're like, oh, I want to hit 100 to 600 yards, but honestly, sometimes I also want to hit 1,000 yards. You can begin to see where the issues here happen. There is nothing that does 1 to 1,000 effectively, as I tried to show here today with this setup. There are some things that come close, but a GPR is optimized to 1 to 400, maybe 1 to 600 depending on the skill, as I've shown in a couple videos. An SPR can hit 1 to 1,000, but for many people, are you ever going to realistically want to engage out to 1,000? And do you need an SPR to engage at 500? No. The SASS is awesome, but you probably can't afford it. People love the hate on PDWs because they're like, fuck it, I'll bring a rifle. I want to hit out to 300 yards. Forgetting the fact that A lot of times, you can't even bring a rifle to certain situations. Alright. I've made my point. I think that last bit was a bit ranty, but it's good to understand when you're after a conversation like this, because I don't really like the trend of, oh, I'm building an SBR, oh, this is a Recce rifle. Generally, pick your mission and design your rifle around it, and then you can call it a Recce rifle, or SPR, or PDW. Alright, I'm gonna fuck off now. Thanks for watching. So this is one of those videos where talking about it in the comment section is sick. Or, head down there, leave a comment, but then go to Discord, because in Discord you can actually have a real conversation, back and forth in real time, and you can go talk to Hop there, he's way cooler than I. Or better yet, actually, comment here first, then go to Discord, because, yeah, I like that algorithm. Anyways, alright guys, I'll see you guys later. Oh, well, I was just...